Talk regions, shall we?
Let's do it.
We're talking regions. Now, we've got to be very global here, and we've got to be pretty much broad brush this because we've got 5 minutes to talk through regions, and you could literally talk hours on each individual region.
Yep.
What are some of the main growing regions of tobacco that we have in cigars?
The Dominican, Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica. Then you can talk about areas where tobacco is grown and sent to those areas in order to have the cigars put together. That would be Pennsylvania, Connecticut. It would be Connecticut seeds grown in Ecuador, which is very popular. A lot of wrapper is grown in Ecuador. Mexico, obviously, and Indonesia, Sumatra.
There are, basically, if you follow the equator around and you're inside the tropics, the closer you get to the equator itself, you're going to find yourself in this beautiful area of where tobacco is from. Now, most of the cigars that we are smoking today are coming generally from a few different areas. Tobaccos are put together, but as far as manufacturing goes, you have Nicaragua, Dominican Republic. Let's just talk about that. Nicaragua, how would you describe Nicaraguan tobacco? How would you describe the experience that someone would get with a Nicaraguan cigar? We'll just
typical, if it's, let's say it's a Nicaraguan Puro cigar, there are 3 primary growing regions or 4 growing regions in Nicaragua. They all are at different elevations, they all have different flavor characteristics, but in general, that tobacco is typically heavier, oilier. The pH in that soil is very intense due to the fact that it's a volcanic area. So the soil is very rich, very nutrient rich, and a lot of that comes from the aspect of the volcanoes. The other part of it is there's a tropical season, which is typically mid-May to October, where it's just raining, and they grow coffee at the top of the mountains that are feeding down into the valleys where the tobacco is grown. So a lot of the nutrients from the coffee areas all wash down into the basins and kind of recycle and kind of bring that land back to life.
Absolutely. And if you are a whiskey drinker, especially a higher proof whiskey drinker, Nicaraguan cigars may match what you're looking for. On the other side, actually not too far away, but on the other side of the spectrum, I believe, would be Dominican Republic.
Yeah. Dominican itself, its pH balance is a little bit different. It has almost more of a tropical island element to that area, particularly where a lot of the farms are closer to the north side, where the north side heading down towards the beach. But their tobacco is a little bit more mild, and typically we'll have a little bit of spice, a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of white pepper, but not as heavy and oily as what you get with Nicaragua.
To me, I get more flavor, more of the actual pronounced flavors that are, the intensity pulls away so you can focus a lot more on the flavor. Those middle strength or medium strength cigars that you can think of, even mainstream, you think of the Fuentes of the world, think of the Davidoffs of the world, and on the boutique side of things, you think of the Principals,
Patoro.
There are a ton of phenomenal manufacturers coming out of the Dominican Republic, and they've also, within LFD, La Flor Dominicana, have found a way to give very oily, very rich, very flavorful tobacco coming out of there as well.
Right. The oldest cigar factory in the world is in the Dominican, which is the La Aurora factory, and it's I can't remember the name of the port we went to. I want to say it's Punta Cana. I don't know if that's it, but there was a port that we stopped in the La Aurora factory. It's the oldest factory in the world.
Now, an up and coming country, I don't want to necessarily say it that way, but in our world that we live in, the American market, particularly within boutique cigars, a country that is really kicking ass and starting to get a name for itself is Mexico.
Mexico, for sure. But we just saw the quality of the construction of the cigars.
That's right.
But Casa Torrent has been farming since 1880 in the San Andreas region. For years, you would hear Padron, Maduro's has a San Andreas wrapper. They just never completed that sentence. It's the San Andreas wrapper that comes from the San Andreas region of Mexico. So where Mexico got kind of a bad rap because of all the fake Cubans and everything that people were exposed to, and then the Te Amo, which was more entry-level cigars, but really a cigar that was manufactured for the Mexican marketplace where people couldn't afford $10 cigars.
Yep.
So the Te Amos made their way to the United States because it was inexpensive.
It's a new world. It's a brick house. It's a fill in the blank of what it was. Unfortunately, between the amount of fake Cubans that we've bought in Mexico and the Te Amos, they went through a dark period. There are some kick-ass cigars coming out of Mexico. Some of my favorite, to be honest. And then on the other side of the world, we have Indonesia and the Asian countries and the Asiatic tobaccos. Now, those are generally very flavor neutral.
Right.
And very often used, as we've spoken about before, you have the wrapper, which is used for the flavor, and then underneath there is the binder, which is used for combustion and construction.
Mm-hmm.
These are tobaccos that are usually a little bit smaller with the leaves. They're not quite as flavorful, but they get out of the way of the wrapper.
Right. Super slow combustion rate. There is one country that we did just fly right over that makes spectacular cigars, and that's Honduras. Honduras is manufacturing some phenomenal, there's incredible tobacco coming out of there. And what makes each region different, Cavalier, what makes each region different is the natural pH balance in their soil. Cuba is like no other place in the world. Honduras is very unique. Africa, where the African Cameroon wrapper comes from, very unique. But in the Honduran factory at JRE, the Uria family figured out how to make Honduran tobacco grow to simulate the African Cameroon perfectly. It took them 14 years, but they were able to get Cameroon to grow in Honduras and taste like African Cameroon. African Cameroon by nature is a very citrusy floral intake, but behind it is pepper. It's like the flavor of a jalapeno is great, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was a hot sucker.
Yep.
So Cameroon does that. It's just very difficult to recreate that flavor in other countries. So there are a lot of product. Our Gen 2 Lancero that Brandon is smoking is actually a Cuban seed grown in the Mexican San Andreas region of Mexico.
And if you want to know about Cuban tobacco, watch our entire Cigars 101 that we did, and we covered about an hour and a half worth of just Cuban tobacco. It is in the experience and everything through. Those are some of the broad-stroked, painted generalizations of some countries.
Two things. Let's talk about the United States. Connecticut, we know about Connecticut shade wrappers. We know about that light wrapper that's typically found on more mild cigars. But there's also a Connecticut broadleaf and a Pennsylvania broadleaf. Those typically will get shipped down to Nicaragua and wrapped around the body of a cigar that's already got a lot of strength. But then they take that really oily tobacco that comes out of that broadleaf tobacco that comes out of Pennsylvania and Connecticut. There was a great shortage of Pennsylvania broadleaf. So many companies were using it, but the issue that you have is a lot of those farms in the United States that are growing broadleaf, they can either get one crop of cigar tobacco or they get two crops a year of cigarette tobacco. So they take the money and run.
So there's that. Next, we are going to talk about top blenders, and this is going to be the most biased segment that we've run through.
It'll be very biased. We got a bunch of guys coming in. What's up, Pops? Brandon.
What's happening? What do we got there? Is it true